and thank you. Idea for today's topic and discussion came from our intrepid staff member, Nancy Avos. Nancy, why don't you say what prompted you to want to do this right now?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the intro, Dick. So I recently read two articles in The Independent that kind of raised some concerns for me. One of which was that in 8 out of 12 elementary schools in Santa Barbara, um, only about 50% of students were able to read by the end of third grade. And it was brought to my attention that this is not just a, local Santa Barbara issue, but it does go statewide and beyond. And another issue was that a lot of immigrant students are feeling threatened and not showing up to schools. So that's definitely going to have impacts on state funding, et cetera. So, and then of course, I do serve on the board of the Santa Barbara Alternatives to Violence Project, where our executive director Ramiro is here, and we know that there are crime on campus. So just a few different issues that I wanted to touch base on the community with and see what we can do as SBCAN or like-minded community organizations to support our teachers and our students.
Right, and so that final point you just made is maybe the goal. If we can get there, that would be great for the people who speak with us, who are all related to the educational problem directly. What can citizens like us do to contribute to strengthening the educational process in our schools at this time? But let's introduce the panel. I don't know why I'm seeing something I've never seen. My Zoom window keeps shrinking. People are becoming smaller and smaller. Well, I won't bother you guys with that right now. So we have, we have the panel turns out to be three people who are presently or recently members of school boards around the county. And this is a county-wide roundtable, meaning people were invited and the discussion can cover county-wide situation. We have with us Janet Blevins, who recently completed her term on the Lompoc School Board. Janet has about 30 plus years of teaching experience. And so the fact that she got onto the Lompoc board was important. She's a board member of SBCAN, so we're very proud of that role that she has. Then we have Gabe Escobedo. Gabe's been a rising community leader over the past number of years. SBCAN gave him an award for emerging leadership at our fundraising event just a couple of months ago. He was served on as chair of the Planning Commission in the city of Santa Barbara, and he worked on police issues, ran for the school board, the Unified School District Board in Santa Barbara, and is now on the board, a very active member. So Gabe will be on the panel. And then Alma Hernandez. Alma, I believe you are still a staff member for Joan Hartman. You can correct anything I say. But you got appointed to the school board in Santa Maria, and are you now running for a full term on the school board? Is that correct?
I ran for a full term on the school board last November, and I earned my seat. So now I'm on it as an an elected member.
Oh, you did get elected. Okay, sorry. I was all right. So that's the panel. At a certain point, we will call on Ramiro who is director of what's the name of the project? The violence. Tell us the name.
It's Santa Barbara Alternative to Violence Project, or you can just go with SBAVP. That's the most popular term.
And you can comment on what you hear from the panel, but also tell us about your organization, which I didn't know anything much about until Nancy said that you were going to join us, and I think Nancy's involved. Nancy, our staff member at SBCAN, is also involved with your project. So that's the agenda for this session. I think Gail Osharenko may want to say some things before we're done at 1:30 about the continuing issue of the jail monitoring project that she's involved in with the League of Women Voters. So the big question to start off is really the one that Nancy was raising. These literacy scores that were publicized a few months ago are really part of the statewide testing program. And are they, I mean, I'd like the three board members to talk about maybe that as a springboard for what are the key problems that the schools are facing in trying to fulfill their mission and bringing all of our students, let's say, up to grade level. That's a kind of technical way of describing what those scores tell us, that the majority of students in a lot of our schools are not reading or performing academically at grade level. The shocking thing that Nancy referred to was that numbers of kids in the third grade in our schools are not passing literacy tests at all. So Gabe, you and I had talked about this, and I know you had some questions that you drew up yourself around all these issues. Why don't you start? We'll give each of you a few minutes to comment on this, and I'll keep the conversation going with questions after the three of you had a chance to make something starting off.
Sure. Good to see you all. Yeah, for literacy, Nancy's right. When you look at our scores and across our schools, but if you even look broader than that at the state level and really nationally, you'll see similar trends. There are some school districts nationally that are doing better than us, but it really goes back to a few things. One, there was this approach to literacy that was adopted decades ago called balanced literacy. And balanced literacy really focused more on, it treated literacy as though it was naturally learned, like speech, for example. Humans have evolved to learn how to mimic speech, and it's something that we can naturally learn. Learning how to walk is a relatively natural process. We have developmental windows when it's really important. I'm leaning a little bit on my experience in kinesiology. But for literacy, when you think about the neuroscience, our brains don't actually learn how to read naturally. It's something that needs to be taught. And so we've started moving away from this balanced literacy approach, which focused a lot on teaching the love of reading, and just if they're around reading, then they'll learn how to read, to more of a scientific based approaches. And something that we used to do, if anyone remembers Hooked on Phonics, that's one of the dimensions of science of reading or structured literacy. You also have other aspects of structured literacy, like decoding, learning how to sound out words, spelling, reading comprehension, writing comprehension, and expression. And so when you're teaching that way, you're actually teaching teachers how to become practitioners, how to diagnose what the issues are, how to provide the right interventions at the right time. Also, one other helpful tool that has started to be implemented is ongoing check-ins and testing. So there's this thing called STAR testing. When you look at state testing scores, those are given at the end of the year, and you're really, for lack of a better way, I wish I had a better way of putting this, those are autopsy reports. The school year is over. There's little time for intervention, so you need more check-ins. STAR testing is testing throughout the school year. And if someone is behind, they're testing them even more often to try to provide interventions that address whatever needs that those particular students have. The training for these teachers, we're putting our teachers through letters training. We adopted a new curriculum for literacy across our schools, and we're starting to see a trend in the right direction. But the comprehensive training takes 2 years. So one additional hurdle for us is that's a long time for us to get all of our teachers through that program. In addition, we have a large portion of our teachers that are close to retirement. And so we're going to have to hire new teachers. So really, I think when I think about this issue, I think it's curriculum. I think it's getting teachers trained so that they become these practitioners in literacy. And the third is really advocacy around university programs and graduate programs that are doing these letters trainings as a part of their curriculum so that when teachers graduate, they're ready to jump in there and really teach literacy. And I'm sure Janet and Alma will fill in the parts that I missed.
Well, this is fascinating because, and to me, slightly unexpected. So the literacy problem is you're foregrounding the actual methods of reading, of teaching reading, as one of the problems that those test scores are reflecting. Which, the reason it's surprising is because I was assuming no, it's broader conditions. It's many students who are not native speakers of English coming into the schools. It's the effects of COVID and other things that are damaging attendance and student engagement, all the rest of that. And we'll maybe get into some of those issues. But I should just say, my mother was a first grade teacher. She taught reading for 40 years in the New York City schools. And she always said, all these fads about how to teach reading are really, she was critical of those for her whole teaching career. She said, you've got to teach students as individuals. You've got to relate your methods of teaching reading to the students themselves rather than follow these educational fashions. And in a way, that's what I hear you kind of getting at in the same, sort of the same point. So Janet, having served for several years on the school board and been a teacher for so long, what kind of comment do you have on this initial question about the literacy scores? And
well, partly I'd like to say that since the 1960s, when Jonathan Cole was writing about the problems in public schools, things in Lompoc have not changed a lot in terms of the fact that we are a very poor, economically poor community. And the relationship between students coming from poor homes when they're not sure where their next meal is coming from, and school is still a very strong relationship. And the correlation between economic position and learning is still very strong. And in a poor community like Lompoc, it affects learning. It affects our absence rates because students need to accompany their parents to be translators at medical appointments and other such events as that. And more recently, our school board passed a proclamation in support of all students, especially as regards to immigration status, saying very loudly that we will not allow any ICE agents on our campuses. We will not allow them to come. All of our parent and student information is private, and nobody has access to any of that in an attempt to relieve the worry about ICE agents. A couple of weeks ago, however, something went out on social media and maybe Parents Square that there were ICE agents around. And so our parents were calling schools in a panic and keeping their kids home because they had heard the same thing, that ICE agents were in the community and they did not feel safe. More broadly, I would say that I hope that teacher education programs have improved since I attended years ago. But one thing that was never an issue, never taught at all in any of the classes that I took or the graduate program that I earned a master's degree in learning disabilities. But discipline was never discussed in teacher education. And if you don't know how to control a classroom, nobody's going to learn to read or learn anything else for that matter. So that is something that I hope has improved in the meantime. We also, in our district, we are sure to include all students. We honor Pride Week. We honor Black History Month. We honor Hispanic Heritage Month. We do all of those things in an effort to make all of our kids, no matter what they look like, no matter where they come from, to make them feel recognized and accepted and at home. We also have social emotional learning in all of our schools because we understand very well that if a student does not feel has issues at home, say if they're anxious about situations at home or in the broader community, they can't learn. If they're worried, they can't concentrate on what's happening in their classroom. So social emotional learning is something that we really, really stress in our district, and it has been very effective in helping students to feel more focused on what's happening in the classroom, which is where they need to be focused, of course. I also love the fact that, as I said, that we recognize all of the different groups of people that we have in our system and honor them and do everything we can to make them feel a part of the larger community. And I think that's extremely important, and I'm very proud of that fact.
All right, well, thank you. I'm glad you referenced both the ways the schools in Lompoc are dealing with or relating to the cultural heritages of the students, and also the socio-emotional dimension of what they do, because those are attacked by certain elements of right-wing thought as the cause of educational deficiency. We're spending all our time on woke stuff and stuff that is not directly bearing on academic mastery. That's, I guess, the argument that some of them would make, but you made the really, in a brief way, suggested that these things are important for improving motivation, improving the ways in which students relate to the schooling experience.
We also are trying to get away from the old model of discipline. We are instituting I'm not remembering the term at this point, so I'm looking at my notes. Restorative justice in many discipline areas, which has the students who've committed an offense participate in the restoration of whatever incident happened, which is a very empowering thing for the students who've been involved in bad behavior. We also have positive behavior intervention supports that are in various different aspects of development throughout our district. Some schools are farther ahead with this program than others, but looking at how we can not just punish, but help kids to learn from their mistakes And that's another thing that I'm really proud of. We have wellness centers in our high schools. We have extra counselors, and so if we all could just concentrate on learning, it would be terrific, but that is not the situation we're in. But we also are achieving growth in more than half of our grade schools have shown growth in academics recently. And so that is a good thing, as well as all the other
Okay,
things.
well, Alma, your turn. Give us a little more idea of your connection to the schools in Santa Maria, not only now on the board, but what's your prior involvement?
Okay. Well, I am a parent of two recent graduates. My son and daughter graduated from Santa Maria schools within the last 5 years. My daughter graduated 2 years ago, and my son 4 years ago. And so that's one thing. And I've been living in the community of Santa Maria for the last I'm gonna say 30 years, almost 30 years.
Uh-huh.
You know, I'm very familiar with the community, working in the communities of Guadalupe with the school districts, and you know, an advocate for I was a champion the dual immersion program going into Jimenez School, getting started there, and had an opportunity to open up a cultural art center, Latino art center for students that were in danger of facing violence in the community. And so we really needed a hub for youth to feel safe and to learn about themselves, and to develop a sense of pride and community. So I opened up that center in 2019. So that you know, those are some of the things that I've been involved with, in addition to just recently joining the high school board.
So how would you respond to the question that we're confronting?
Well, there's you know, in the issue of, you know, just the low literacy rates and attendance, you know, definitely, you know, I feel like it's really important to really work with our English language learners, as well as our students with disabilities, you know, to really focus in and hone in on that, you know, work with our elementary schools to have a curriculum that sort of is in alignment with what we're doing at the high school, so that when we receive the students, they're not already behind. We've been working really hard with all our schools, because when you know, about 5 years ago, every single school was in charge of their own every single principal was in charge of their own high school. And so they kind of, everybody was doing their own math program, their own, you know, just everything according to what they thought was best. But about 5 years ago, we started looking at what are the things that are going on. Not me, because I just joined a couple of years ago, but the district itself has been, you know, trying to align all the schools, and the math curriculum. We started a new math curriculum, and working together to focus on how the data is, you know, making changes, training teachers, you know, and making sure that the you know, the teachers in the community reflect this, have an understanding, cultural understanding of our community. And we've been, you know, seeing a lot of really great results. This past year, we saw our English language arts scores, CAASPP scores, increased by 10.4%. And we were recognized by the California Department of Education for being one of the top districts in the state, and in an increase in English language learners as well, in their scores. So, and you know, we saw increases in our science scores, and now and also in the, you know, top 5 statewide in regards to the increases. So we were able to see some of the changes, you know, in our data, that it's making a difference, and that we're going in the right direction. I've been keeping an eye on the attendance, and unfortunately, fortunately, up to this point, I've been you know, just checking in with the schools in regards to, you know, our students not attending. We've been, you know, at past capacity, so all our schools are overcrowded right now. So we're looking to open up a new, you know, high school. So you know, we ran a bond, unfortunately it didn't pass last year. But we do need to open up a new high school. All our high schools are, you know, past 3,000 students. And, you know, other than the protests, and we haven't seen a necessarily a decrease in attendance, but you know, I am checking in, you know, regularly to see if anything changes, because I know that there's, you know, a lot of concern out there right now, a lot of fear, and we're doing our best to try to address those things. And I just wanted to do a shout out for Lompoc, because we're always looking at what Lompoc is doing, because they always seem to be ahead of the game. And a lot of things that I learned from, you know, the school districts in Lompoc. So just wanted to show my appreciation for that.
So both you and Janet are actually pointing to the fact that the scores, which seem depressing, are not the whole story. That there's quite a lot of creative effort going on with measurable good outcomes. Is that a fair way of summarizing what you were just saying? And you were listing both of you listed some of the ways in which these kind of efforts are going on. So if I heard you right, you said that you don't have attendance problems. Um, so, so let me get back to Gabe and Janet. Are there attendance problems in Santa Barbara, in the Santa Barbara Unified School District?
Yeah, we do have attendance problems for a variety of reasons. It could be barriers, so there could be something going on at home that the family is really focusing on that. It could be that there's not transportation, housing, and food insecurity we're seeing become an even bigger problem for a lot of our families and our students. Um, it really could be that they're struggling academically or behaviorally, and school doesn't feel like the best place for them. They don't feel like they have their place there. They don't feel like they have trusted adults on campus. And so what we're really trying to do is we've centered a few things. So we've centered one, really trying to make sure that each student has at least a few trusted adults on campus, meaning they have someone when something goes wrong or they're struggling with someone, they're able to find that person. The reason why we try to get them anywhere from 3 to 5 trusted adults on campus is what happens if they only had one person and that person's out that day and they have a crisis. If they have 3 to 5, there's a greater chance that they're going to have someone that they can go to. We're also, we have family engagement liaisons, and we have other staff that are really focused on doing outreach to families and keeping close contact with families, especially for our youth who are experiencing larger rates of absenteeism, reaching out to see what those issues are and connecting with community partners or some of our resources to address them. We provide counseling for families. We provide all of our students get free breakfast and lunch. So no matter their economic status, there's free breakfast and lunch, and that's to remove the stigma too of getting free or reduced lunch. We also, for our alternative high school, we actually purchased a van where our staff can actually go and pick up students if there's transportation issues or if there's some sort of barrier for students, go out and check in on students if they're absent. But yeah, there are definitely some absenteeism challenges in our Santa Barbara schools, but the solution isn't just a one size fits all. It's a very specific to each of these families. And we're really starting to see the strain of just folks living in more precarious living situations and more precarious like financial situations. Families are just trying to figure out how to survive, and sometimes academics falls lower on the priority list when you have these other concerns.
So Alma said that the schools in Santa Maria are overcrowded. Is that the same story in Santa Barbara, or is it maybe an opposite story? Are there certain schools is there any conversation about the need to consolidate schools, or how does it look? How does that picture look in Santa Barbara?
Yeah, there haven't been discussions yet, but I would go out to say, and it's not necessarily in the near future, but we definitely, many of our schools are um, too large for the student population that they have. And there will be at some point in the future, I'm sure, discussions about um, whether or not to consolidate schools. Because we look at our elementaries in particular and just across the district, and this is a trend across the state as well, enrollment's declining. Folks are having fewer children in our region. Families are moving out of the region because they can't afford the cost of living. And so we're seeing fewer and fewer kids each year in our school district. And then you look at our elementaries and we have many elementaries and the enrollment continues to drop there. And we have some relatively small elementaries in schools that are too large for the school population. So there will be some discussion. There's also discussion about, there will likely be discussion about whether to make our junior highs middle schools, because we have one junior high that's well attended, La Colina Junior High, and then our other junior highs are relatively low student population for the size of the school. So adding sixth grade to the junior highs, we have the space to accommodate them, and there are some other reasons why you would do it to support the students, but yeah, there are definitely going to be discussions at some point in the future. I'm not sure when though.
Janet, did you want to make any comment on this, the attendance and issue with respect to Lompoc?
We do not have schools. We're not going to be consolidating any schools together. We have varying sizes of student populations. Lompoc High School is at over 1,600. They have some space problems there, definitely. The other regular high school in our district, Cabrillo, is a much smaller enrollment. They have plenty of space on their campus for all their students. I would just like to comment that we have one person in this group who believes that everything I'm saying is woke and not on topic. So thanks a lot for that, Mr.
All right, well, I didn't want to introduce the controversy that's going on chat into our space here.
No, I know. I just said that. I won't say anything else.
All right. So I actually appreciate the fact that all three of you board members are feeling good about a lot that you've been able to do as board members in helping the schools fulfill their mission. There sounds like a lot of programmatic efforts and a lot of hard work being done. But maybe we should turn to what are the problems that citizen action would be helpful in. If you could tell people how ordinary citizens or members of the community, what can you do to help our schools? What would be the kind of recommendations that you would put forward? It's not a lack of community involvement, but not all of it is necessarily the constructive for the. I noticed that in comments on the independent article that Nancy referred to about the literacy scores, there was a stream of comments blaming teachers for not teaching. They're lazy teachers. That was an attitude. And then that usual argument that schools are spending all their time not on teaching academic subjects, but on irrelevant stuff, which is now being labeled as woke. Those voices may be very vocal in that kind of space. I don't know that those are the main voices from the community that you hear, or are they? I guess that's the question for each of you board members. When you hear from the wider community, what's constructive and what would you wish people would get better understanding of? You want to go again, Gabe? We'll start with you.
I think Janet wants to go.
Oh, Janet, okay.
Thanks. We hired a new superintendent 2 years ago. Previously, we had a superintendent for 10 years who was not present. He was not in our community ever. He lived in Santa Barbara. He didn't even come to work. And people lost trust, and we tried to pass a couple of bond issues during that tenure, and they failed. Well, we just passed a bond issue this last November, finally, because we have a new superintendent who people in the district trust. She gained trust with all of our teachers by visiting every classroom in the district more than once, and developing relationships with all of the administrators and many of the students. And so we successfully passed a bond issue. Our schools are all 60 years old. And without upgrades, our kids are not getting proper science education, proper math education. So many things depend on support of the taxpayers in the community. I don't know why California is one of only 6 states that uses average daily attendance to fund our schools, ADA, but all of the other states that use that method are deep red states. So it's really interesting to me. And I think that the legislature is looking at that issue. But again, Lompoc is now on the up and up because we have passed a bond issue and we can update our 60-year-old schools and classrooms. And that will increase our achievement scores because kids will realize that adults in the community do care about them and give them decent learning spaces.
In short, citizen support for improving the funding of our schools is the most
Absolutely
thing, and that's that all my life, that's been the main hope politically for improving education in America. I don't know where California stands in terms of ranking, in terms of per student expenditures. We used to be horrible. Maybe we still are, but I'm not sure where we are at that point. Alma, you want to chime in on this citizen action question?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. The issues that face our students are within our school, but we work in partnership with community organizations to be able to tackle them, and in addition with parents. And it's not something that we can tackle alone in the schools. The issues of immigration, drug use, housing, gang violence, just all those issues. And, low income, just being low income, it's something that we need to tackle together. And so the work that SBCAN is doing is really helpful to our district. And, we want to just continue just to seeking opportunities for youth, recreational opportunities. We need, more organized recreation opportunities for kids to stay busy, to have healthy, options, healthy influences, and, to continue on the right track. And so I think that's one way to support. And then the second way, I mentioned a little bit earlier, and that's we do need that, the additional high school. And so we're gonna, go again to try to get another bond and see if we can get it passed. So we can get another high school put into our district, and that alleviates a lot of the issues that I just mentioned in regards to, the smaller the school size, the more students have opportunities for, programs. There's no problems at lunch, as any, and there's just a better sense of wellness for students and teachers, and oversight of the schools. And so we really need that, that support from SBCAN. It's building a school requires about 50 to 60 acres, and so there's going to be that too, finding a piece of land that's huge. And so that's something, we could also, ask for support for, a good piece of land. And, just something that, will work for our community in addition to our students. So I think that those are the main things.
Great. Gabe, how would you respond?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with Alma and Janet. I think bonds are for sure one big way that you're going to see a lot of school districts putting bonds on ballots for a variety of reasons. And a lot of them are infrastructure. There's just not enough funding for infrastructure, whether it's building new high schools or taking care of our current buildings. Building housing is also another one. I think broadly, I'll go broadly and then I'll be a little bit more specific to school districts. I think by supporting any sort of policy or support system for working class families, you're supporting our schools because you're supporting the teachers and staff that work in schools, and you're supporting the families. So when we talk about affordable housing, we're seeing that become like a really big topic of conversation for keeping our staff, also taking care of our families. Like I spoke about earlier, we have more and more families that are living in worse and worse living conditions, overcrowding, living in their cars, homelessness. And I just think childcare is another one. Providing these opportunities for just working class people. When it comes to school districts specifically, I think in the near term, it's going to be really helpful to have folks come out and show support, because we are going to start seeing, and we've seen it a little bit in recent weeks at our school board meetings, people coming out and echoing the rhetoric that we heard in this Dear Colleague letter that was talking about removing funding from any school that's focusing on DEI. And DEI is becoming like the focus, just like how critical race theory was 4 or 8 years ago. And we need additional voices there voicing support for the equity work that we're doing, and other voices there to just show support and give courage to board members and staff that are out there every single day. Because when I think about a lot of the work that we're doing, whether it's literacy, whether it's math, whether it's in our junior highs and our high schools, and making sure that all of our students, when they graduate, they have the full agency that if they want to go to university, they can go to university. If they want to go to a trade school, they can go to a trade school, but they all have opportunity, right? It's really hard to get there where all of our students graduate with that opportunity if they don't see themselves in the curriculum, they don't see themselves in those that are teaching, they don't feel like they have a space in our schools, and they don't have a community in our schools. And I think Janet and Alma both pointed to this earlier. It's really hard to focus on academics when you are worried about all of these other things. And that includes the ICE discussion. It really does. Like, that is a real near-term need that we have. So supporting organizations like 805 and DocuFund is really, really important. Our students and families need to know that our schools are safe places, and we're doing our best. And I know the three of us are doing our best to make sure that our families and our students know that. But whatever we can do to make sure that our families are in Santa Barbara County know that we have their back, and that goes with supporting the orgs that are supporting these families and that are informing the larger community. I think that's one big way right now that we can get involved and help. There are for sure some longer term things around supporting funding for our schools and volunteering at our schools, but I think right now it's a little bit of triage. I think that's pretty high up on the list.
I think this is an excellent point about all of us needing to defend what is being labeled DEI or woke programs, which are, if there's, what's the percentage of students who are of immigrant background in the Santa Barbara schools? Is it more than half?
Of immigrant background, I don't.
Or by immigrant background, I mean either themselves immigrant or they're first generation here. Do you have any idea? Or just Latino? What's the...
We have a large Latino population in our schools for sure. And I don't know about first generation or immigrant, but we have quite a few emergent multilingual students too, or English language learners.
Right.
So that's some indication that we do have Spanish-speaking families in our community, some of which may some of which are undocumented. We don't know how many folks are, but this is a big concern in our county, countywide. We are getting text messages every day. Oh, looks like Ramiro has it. 65% of our school is Latino families. So like, or Latino students. So it is absolutely a large concern for us. And I think when it comes time, I think having folks out there just even coming to public comment is like really, really important because they are starting to come out, and I anticipate that it's going to get worse. The education department nationally just opened up like a hotline where people can basically call in and report their school districts if they're doing DEI programs or DEI curriculum. And I just anticipate that more and more people in our community are going to start coming out to our meetings.
So one thing I wanted to ask you about, this slightly different topic, but it's certainly related. You, I think, joined the school board. One of your goals, which you've begun to achieve, is to get unused school land be available for housing development for school employees. You want to, and tell us about that issue and how that's working out.
Yeah, so school districts have a lot of land. I mean, they have land. And for Santa Barbara Unified in particular, they have a lot of unused land. And one of the things that we struggle with the most is recruitment and retention, and cost of living is always the #1 reason for that. And particularly, so we oftentimes talk about our teachers rather, but our classified staff. So these are basically everyone that is not certificated, doesn't have a teaching credential and working. It could be the folks serving our kids lunch. It could be the folks that are family engagement liaisons working with families. It could be the playground supervisors. It's our para educators that are helping the teachers. They are really, really struggling. And so what one of the first things that we did is started an ad hoc committee to take a look at the opportunity to create staff housing. And we inventoried all of our properties. We partnered with the Housing Authority of City of Santa Barbara, which is an excellent organization. We're not in the business of building and operating housing, but they're the experts. So that we got them on board, looked at our properties and identified a number of properties that were prime opportunities for staff housing. And we actually just submitted the application for our first housing project. It's on the east side across the street from Trader Joe's at Parma School. That's going to be 30 units there. And then we sold a property about 8 years ago, and it's called the Tatum property. It's over next to San Marcos High School. That is going to be mostly market rate, but we were able to negotiate in there 110 units for staff housing that will be deed restricted, affordable, and run by the County Housing Authority. And then we also got 7.7 acres donated to us from the Glen Annie project. If we remember the rezoning that was happening at the county level, we were able to negotiate with them to get a donation of 7.7 acres, which is enough space for 200 to 300 units. And we actually have a meeting later today to talk about how we're going to fund it. And that's going to be staff housing as well. So we're looking at anywhere from 300 to 400 units that the school district will eventually have to support their staff. It's going to help us with retention. It's going to help with just cost of living for a lot of our staff. And we sent out a survey. We got 700 responses, and it was heartbreaking how many of the comments in there, because they were just a text box, they could leave whatever comments. How many of them either said, just please help, like, please make this happen. And how many people just expressed the dire need for something like this. And I know it's across the spectrum for many of our working families. and many of the folks in our community, but definitely in our schools with our teachers and our staff.
Thank you very much. That's a great report. So there are some hands up, so we may as well recognize them. Rachel, you have your hand up for a long time. Go ahead.
Hello, my name's Rachel Solomon. I've known Dick for a long time, member of SBCAN, and also LaWanda Lyons Pruitt, who I see on here. I retired public defender. I did a lot of work with juveniles charged with crimes. And since I've been retired for the last 5 years, I've been volunteering at McKinley Elementary through Partners in Education, which is sort of the nonprofit arm of SBUSD that does a lot of big projects. And so I just have maybe a dozen possible suggestions that I've developed. So one is volunteer. You can sit in a kindergarten class and have kids read to you. It's really sweet. It's really fun. It's an hour out of your time. You would have to go to the individual school to do it. Number two, contact the PTAs of all these schools. Do they need money? One of the coolest things that you can do is take kids on field trips, hands-on learning, whatever it is, museums, beaches, going to schools, going to auto shops, just getting out into the world. That's how you can give kids a sense of agency and also a sense that there are all kinds of possibilities. It's not just doctor, lawyer, or dishwasher. I mean, that there's a huge spectrum of things to do that are right here in the community. You can, the Wilderness Youth Project has been around for a long time, and they work with individual schools to take kids out for an hour or two once a week. And it's a lot of nature study and hiking. And again, gives the kids a sense of agency, fresh air, that there's something you can do off your screens. All the cool stuff that we used to do. You look at bugs, you get your feet wet in the stream, you see birds. Another thing to do is Partners in Education does a lot of career talks and career mock interviews, which again, the kids, they'll just raise you up because they are so present and focused. You can do help with any kind of sports. You can make ribbons. You can just cheer them on. You can go to their games. So many of the kids, their parents work, both parents or the one parent that they have, and they can't come to a game. When testing time is coming up and you can get the schedule, make an extra effort to maybe be part of a homework club. So the high schools have an after-school homework club. And I really feel that the more regular folks go in and actually connect with actual students, the brighter your day will be, and the more you will see how hard everyone is working and how much these kids want to be part of the world. They ask wonderful questions. They are wildly curious. And there's these discussions about, DEI or whatever that is at this day and age. But I will say that the socio-emotional learning, which is a minimal amount of time. I sit in classrooms, 6th grade, 5th grade, 4th grade classrooms all day. They're doing a ton of work. They have a huge curriculum. They have to get through it. They do get through it. But I've had the kids come to me and say, I said, "Oh, how was your tummy? It was hurting yesterday." And the girl will say, "Oh, it's better, but something else happened in my house yesterday." And I said, "Oh, what's that?" And we sat down and she was able to tell me her mom died of diabetes. Her father is really sick and was yelling at her and making her cry, and she didn't have a blanket. And in the middle of that, she just stopped and said, "Can I have a hug?" And she just walked over to me. She said, "I haven't had a hug in a long time." And to me, a child who has that self-awareness to say, this is what I need, this is what is happening, and that has a trusted adult who just comes in is incredibly important. It's one child at a time. And whatever your thoughts are about immigration, these children are here. They're here. They're trying to learn. They're beautiful. They're funny. They're talented. They're scared. They're irritating. But in the end, it's each child. So please just stop all these big chunks of categories and go work with some kids. They're wonderful. And donate to the PTAs, to Wilderness Youth Project, to, show up. They're wonderful. And they're our kids. They're all our kids.
You're inspiring. Thank you, Rachel. Alan.
Thank you, Rachel.
Alan,
Yes.
your hand is up, isn't it?
Yes, I was just waiting. I thought you were going to say more than just my name. Hello. Well, thank you for your presentations today. I really am learning a lot. I guess my question came up when Gabe was talking about the lands that were accessible for additional schools, and also hearing about an abundance of schools and maybe having to consolidate. And that's kind of on the opposite side of what I'm hearing or what I've heard from Mid and North County. And I wanted to ask Janet and Alma, do you see the same amount of resources, space, school size? And then maybe specifically for the city of Santa Maria, I know Ken and I and Nancy have been hearing a lot about having no space for schools. And so I wanted to hear a little bit about if Gabe's experience is shared in Mid and North County.
Great, thanks.
Our district is declining enrollment. So, but we are also working on building workforce housing. We have property in our district and are researching other places that already have it. And I think that we will have workforce housing within 5 years, maybe. And that will be huge. We have a lot of teachers that commute from Santa Barbara, Santa Maria, other places, and that is definitely an issue.
Great. Alma, do you have a angle on this?
Yes, for Santa Maria Joint Union High School, we definitely are seeing an increase in enrollment. Unfortunately, there was a bond that did pass at the beginning of the century that was supposed to go to building a new school, and I know that caused a lot of the hardship and why people didn't want to vote for another bond. And then unfortunately, the economy took a turn for the worst, and then there was no new housing, and there was no new population. There was a stagnancy and an enrollment at the districts. So the districts decided to work on other projects, gyms and auditoriums and fixing up the schools, and they did some beautiful work at Santa Maria High School. They have state-of-the-art facilities and it's the state-of-the-art theater at Pioneer and just a lot of good things that are happening with a CTE center that was built that has 32 different career fields that students are learning from. But unfortunately, Santa Maria is growing a lot now, and so it's probably the lowest income community of Santa Barbara County. One of the lowest income, I'm going to say, because I work in Lompoc too, and I know that there's a lot of lower income housing there as well. And so, it's become sort of the space where people go from all over the county to purchase homes, and the city council doesn't seem, they don't, they want to continue building. So the schools are overpopulated, and there's not, the classroom sizes are increasing, and that's not good for our students. That's not good for our teachers, and it's not good for our students. So it's really important that, we are able to pass a bond, the next one that comes around, and that we really lean in on that and focus on that, for many, many reasons. A lot of the issues that we're dealing with can be alleviated by, more smaller classroom sizes and more space for our students. So.
All right, well, that's great. So I think it would be good for me to ask Ramiro to comment. Tell us about your the Alternatives to Violence project and how that relates to the kinds of issues in school situation that we're talking about here. Welcome.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I want to thank everybody for allowing me to show up here today and kind of describe what our programming is. So, like I said, my name is Ramiro, and I am the executive director of the Santa Barbara Alternatives to Violence Project. Our mission is to really build thriving communities, to to transform communities by encouraging youth to lead nonviolent lives through mentorship, education, and accountability. And I think our programming is very relevant to what's going on right now in the schools. Uh, Specifically right now, we're working at the Santa Barbara High School and junior highs. We do a lot of well, to start off, we have a MOU with the Santa Barbara Unified School District to do the weekend workshops where we cover a lot of the social emotional learning, right? We use those methods of AVP that was developed in the prison system in 1961 through the Attica prison riots, and we're basically the only from what I know, the only nonprofit in the country that does it specifically for youth. AVP is very popular in the prison system. So, I mean, if you ever meet a formerly incarcerated individual and you mention AVP, chances are they're going to know about it. So, and so we tailor that to the youth and we do the weekend workshops, but that's only really like the foundation of what we do, right? We give them the basic communication skills and coping skills to not use nonviolence as a response to any barrier that's going on in their lives. But it's easier said than done. I think where we're the strongest is when we bring in the accountability part. So that's, as I was mentioning before, the Santa Barbara High School and the junior high, we have an on-site case management programming where we do conflict resolutions and we do the follow-ups and we do the accountability. So we keep track of them after we do any kind of conflict mediation. And all staff, which is right now 3 staff, are trained in restorative justice. We do refresher courses. We recently did one with the SB Teen Legal Clinic. We're certified in psychological first aid. So if our outreach coordinators get some kind of call in the afternoon or even at night, if it's appropriate, and there is some kind of crisis going on, we can go in, mediate that really quick, and get them to the right resource. So really, we are a community-led organization led by individuals that, are either from the area or have invest a significant amount of time into the wellness of the community. And I say that because I myself am not from Santa Barbara County, but again, I've been highly involved in community-led projects and I'm highly dedicated to the well-being of the community. So that's really what we do. We're not only providing that service in the weekends, we're providing that service in the high schools. We're there every single day. We talk to most of our youth are really not one most of our youth are really those youth that don't really gravitate to those youth programs like like Future Leaders of America, which is highly popular and I really like that program, but that's not really something that they want to do. But they still need those resources, they still need that help. So we're always there to constantly talk to them, and we leverage our lived experience, social capital to meet them where they're at. And like Gabe said, like provide them, point them to those resources where if they want to go to college, if they want to do a trade school, if they simply just want to get a job, those are things that remove barriers for them. And we also consider everything that's going on, right? So I don't look at when we get a new referral as oh my God, this the ed code violation, brandishing weapons, or fighting. Like we look at how that situation started, and sometimes it can be as simple as, oh, well, I fought this guy because, he dated a girl that I liked, or he dated my ex-girlfriend. So now I'm mad and I'm gonna go get in a fight with him. But it takes a lot of work for them to even want to admit that when we do conflict resolutions, right? Sometimes you just got to let them air it out in a room where we're at. So we always do 2 people per conflict resolution, and we've done large groups with no incidents. So we've been highly successful in not only basically squashing the disagreement, but also holding them accountable for the harm that was done, and also kind of, reducing the need to reharm. So that's the biggest thing of how we do social restorative justice that sometimes falls through the cracks and through no one's fault, right? When a school official does it and everything, it's, you're in charge of thousands of students, right? So our thing is to bridge that gap and create that trust to not to make ourselves look better and just do wellness, but to also give the school staff a break, right? They don't have to concern themselves with, oh, these two are in my class, they're going to get in a fight, and I could only give them 5 minutes of my time or 10 minutes of my time because I have to be preparing for each student, right? So we've been doing this since 2017. My predecessor and co-founder JP was running it for a while all by himself, and he was very successful in how he did a lot of the community outreach and everything. But with being a one-man team comes the fact that there's really a high reliance in word of mouth and, getting name out there. So one of the biggest changes that I've implemented is, really talking to administrators, really making those connections with funders and all that in order for us to be not only word of mouth, but like relevant in all the circles so that so we can become a resource essentially in the entire county. That's the biggest, that's the big ambition. But for now, we started in Santa Barbara. Our dedication right now is Santa Barbara, but we're always open to have the conversations of moving this program or replicating it with reputable, credible community members in Lompoc or Santa Maria. Janet, it looks like Janet has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Janet.
I failed to mention a group that we have here, are fortunate to have here in Lompoc, called Future for Lompoc Youth. And this organization works with what we maybe used to call at-risk students. We now call them at-promise students, and helps them both in school achievement and in looking at possibly what they want to do when they graduate, understanding that some kids will want to further their education and others will want to go into a trade. And they have been very successful. These students, they have graduation ceremonies from the program, which are very inspiring. And they were key in getting our bond issue passed. They walked precincts and worked with all kinds of other supporters. And I look forward to their continued success. Future for Lompoc Youth.
Okay, thank you. Is that related to your program, Ramiro? Do you know those people?
I know of them. I've never spoken to them directly, but I have heard of them. And I mean, I'm glad they're working out for you, Janet. That's fantastic. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm sure
it's
that contributes
a
to the
great
success
group.
of, yeah, I'm sure that contributes to the success of the district that you're seeing right now.
So I just want to get a little more clarity on specifics on how your project works. So you're present in all the Santa Barbara high schools and junior high, or how does that?
So our workshop, so that very baseline curriculum that we have that is introduced, that's district wide. So we get referrals from all the administrators for that specifically. Our case management and our conflict resolution, everything that has made us successful in 2 campuses, which is Santa Barbara High School and Santa Barbara Junior High, is only focused on that because those sites specifically funded that side of the program. Uh, so that's where we're mostly operating. However, if there's any kind of cross issues in terms of like if it's a conflict between say someone in San Marcos and someone in Santa Barbara High, we do step in more as like a courtesy for the school to kind of mediate the situation. So that's something we do as long as we see kind of some cross pollination with some of the issues that are going on in the Santa Barbara Unified. We typically step in, and administrators do trust us in following up with the students, because that's definitely something that's really kind of set us apart from any kind of case management or outreach, is that we do the constant follow-up and we keep track of them until they graduate.
And do you train volunteers to work with you and school personnel to work with you? Is that part of what you're doing?
We've certainly made that offer. I don't think anybody's taken us up on that for a couple years already. Prior to the pandemic, that was a little more popular avenue of approach, but it's just I guess it hasn't really caught anybody's interest. But I mean, the teachers do know that we're there frequently, and they know that we do work with the students, and it's like I mentioned, it's kind of like it alleviates a lot of their um stress load, which is, from what I've seen in Santa Barbara Unified, it's pretty high. And there's a and that and that's a whole nother conversation where we can say it's lack of resources, it's seeing such a large population of Latino, like I was mentioning to Gabe, be in kind of fight or flight situations, just waking up and you know, looking at your parents. I mean, I think some of the more, I would say one of the most frequent things that I'm getting now is that, hey, can you help me find a job? I'm having a 16-year-old ask me, can you help me find a job? And at least when I was growing up, finding a job just meant having money for yourself. But it's literally, oh, because I need to help out my dad. I need to help out my mom that's already working 2 jobs.
Huh. Wow.
So that's really the tragedy that we're going through right now in South County. It's because before, I would say probably like 4 years ago, when I had just started an AVP, a lot of it was, all right, let's build you up, and then let's kind of, hey, do you like this program that does more of the, career build up, art stuff, stuff that we don't specialize in, but we'd get their grades up, get their social skills up, and then we'd send them to those programs. I could say that that has been that part that we used to do has gone down because there's such a dire economic need.
Uh-huh.
And that's just this year. I can't speak of next year or the year before. During the pandemic, we were pretty minimal in terms of like services provided because of obvious reasons.
Well, I really appreciate learning about what you guys are doing. Is there anybody in the group who has questions for Ramiro about the Alternatives to Violence project or the story that they're working on? Anybody have that? I need to see if I can get to the whole group. I don't see any hands up. Uh, is Gail here? Gail Arsharenko? She not here?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
she's
here.
here.
Okay, so
Um,
you wanted to have a few moments.
Yeah. Um, I just want to thank Ramiro, and I just looked up your website. You might want to stick your website link into the chat so everybody can see who you are, how to get in touch. I know a lot of you made it to the immigration forum, protecting our immigrant community. I just wanted to mention that if you want to share that with other people who didn't make it, or those of you who didn't make it, the whole forum is up on our YouTube site. If you go to YouTube, put in LWV, Santa Barbara League of Women Voters, and I think you'll get to it. Hopefully that's right, or Pam might stick a link into the chat for us. It will be up in the Spanish language version within a couple of days. Not sure, usually it just takes a little longer to prep that part of the video. And thank you all who did make it. We had a completely packed standing room only audience yesterday at Faulkner Gallery. So what I wanted to mention today is some of you may have seen the article by Larry Severance and I in the Indy, came out yesterday, about our jails. Our joint Clue League group, who's been working on trying to reduce the number of people in our jails so that we can get out from under the Murray case disability rights lawsuit. We're coming to a really critical moment. Right now on the sort of long-range calendar of the Board of Supervisors, the board is going to be asked to decide how many beds to add to the North County Jail. It's scheduled for April 1st, but anything and everything you all can do between now and then to talk with your supervisors, to talk with your city councils, to get support from your city councils for limiting the number of beds that we have to add, it will help. We got the really shocking news, I guess like last week, that our group has always supported the idea of adding one new pod, now they're calling it one housing unit, 256 beds to the North County Jail, in order to be able to close most of the South County Jail, which is decrepit, unworkable, understaffed. It's depressing. And the plan is to remodel that as only an intake facility with 120 beds. On average today, it has 400 people in it, 400 inmates. While the North County Jail is 376 capacity, and it's running at about 340. The sheriff always wants to have 10 to 15%. He'd prefer 15 or 20% flexibility because not everybody can program with everybody else. So we have met with a whole group of other organizations and individuals to try to make a much larger coalition. So we're ready for this decision. Oh, I stopped mid-sentence. So back 3 years ago, the cost of adding one housing unit, 256 beds, was $76.6 million. Today, we're hearing it's close to $100 million. And that increase of $24+ million, the county can't figure out how they would service that debt because they were planning to service the debt by the savings that would happen as you closed most of the South County Jail. And you have a much lower cost for staffing up in North County. I've heard 2-to-1 staffing, but I don't really know what the numbers are. It's built as a direct supervision facility, so you have one deputy in a unit with 64 people, and that deputy is trained to be a mentor. So you can operate 24 hours on 2 staff. Now, you still have to have some staff to walk people around, but everything is built more contained. Every unit has a door you can walk out and you're in a yard with sunlight coming down. It's not a big yard, but people aren't walking people to every dentist and doctor and therapy appointment and everything else. So it's a much more functional jail. Is it what we'd like to see? No, but it's quieter. People like it better. The people who work there like it better. So I don't know what's going to happen, but if the sheriff wants 2 pods, he wants 512 additional beds. And I'm hearing that if he doesn't get that, he won't close down all the parts of the South County that need to be shuttered. And that all of the extra cost is going to eat into the general fund budget, which means everything that we're working on to try to get more mental health beds and more mental health services and more housing and more dealing with people's needs in the community gets cut if we add too many jail beds. And we don't believe that people are served well, and we don't believe that. We know that many of the people who are incarcerated now do not represent a threat to the community. They're in there on, lower level charges, whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony. And gradually programs like the READY program of the public defender are working to get them out earlier and get them into community services. So we just need your help. Reach out to me, reach out to Pam Flint Tambo. The Fund for Santa Barbara has convened the first kind of gathering of all of us, and we want everybody to be part of it. It will affect everything else, all the other things that SBCAN works for, if we end up having to overbuild that jail. I guess that's really all I need to say.
Was there a specific meeting that you were referring to that you would like people to go to?
We don't have another date, but the fund, Eder Gaona at Fund for Santa Barbara called together the first meeting, and we expect we'll have additional meetings in March. And basically, some of you were there and know about it, and we're trying to get articles into the press, and it's great if you write supporting letters to the editor, to any of the newspapers, especially in North County. The more you can get, more pressure you can put on your North County supervisors, the better off we'll be. I'm sure they're pretty freaked out too by the costs that are coming in. It's hard when you have the sheriff's budget eating so much of the county budget already, to have this news that we might have to borrow a huge amount of money to overbuild the North County. I should say, when we had our first meeting, a number of the groups really are not in favor of adding any beds to North County. I don't think that's realistic, that we can get that and also really shut down most of South County, which is really expensive to run. The 120 beds remaining will be direct supervision beds. There is a wing with 4 units now that has been upgraded some and will be upgraded more. And
Okay.
we certainly support that. I think the county can't tell us what's going to be on the agenda to choose April 1st, because they're scratching their heads about the cost.
All right.
Jean, you have a question?
Hopefully the SBCAN staff will be informing our mailing list about what things people can directly be doing. Jeannie, did you have something to say? We're almost done. Jeannie?
Muted.
You're muted.
Gosh, it sure would help if I unmuted. Thank you. Well, as Gail knows, our co-executive director, Ken Huff, attended that first meeting that Eder put on with the Fund for Santa Barbara. So we are involved in this issue, and it is deeply concerning to us about jail issues. One thing I wanted to talk about, and I didn't make the meeting, but when they were arguing to have the North County Jail, they said, well, some people should be housed closer to the communities where they live, so that their loved ones can visit them. So I'm wondering what if the solution is to bring Santa Barbara people up to the North County, what happens to that connection to their community? And why couldn't a portion of the Santa Barbara Jail be demolished and constructed as a new pod rather than making the pod up here? Because it's really just property, right? So I don't know, you probably know the answer to that, Gail, but it seems like they could build new beds there rather than, or remodel the beds down there so that people.
Jeannie, so our rule is to stop at 1:30, which it just about is. So I'm not gonna let, I know I'm being very dictatorial here, but that's the fashion of these days.
Maybe you could just let Gail answer that, and we'll go a couple of minutes over.
Okay, go ahead, Gail.
Well, the answer is really cost. The South County Jail has space now that is adequate and workable for 120. The North County Jail has no in-person visitation now at all. It's all done by Zoom. And one of the things they have promised us they will add when they add one more housing unit is visitation, in-person possibility for everybody who's in that jail now. So we would begin to address that. I mean, people are driving up there now only to find out they're only going to meet with their loved one on a Zoom. So it's a horrible situation now. And yeah, I don't know what the provisions will be in the South County Jail for visitation later. I mean, for people who work there, I'm sure they want to have a jail at each end of the county if we have to have jail at all.
Okay,
But
Yeah.
good point.
all right.
You could have a whole program on this and
Yes, we
and
could.
we can come and talk for a whole hour.
All right, well, that might be on our future agenda. Say, Ken, why don't you tell us about the SBCAN membership meeting in 1 minute, and then we will adjourn.
We're having the annual membership meeting. Okay, Jeannie, you take it.
Okay,
Then
Okay,
we'll
well,
adjourn.
it's March 9th. It'll be at St. Mark's in the Valley church where we normally meet. We have the new mayor of Buellton as our guest speaker, David Silva. We're inviting all members to come, or people who potentially like to be members. We will also have an online link. So if you'd like to Zoom in, we will do it that way as well. Maybe, I don't know, do you want to add anything to that, Nancy?
No, just that we're really looking forward to seeing everyone. So please come if you
but what
can.
is the time of the meeting?
2 p.m. to 4 p.m.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think this was a very good example of what the roundtables can accomplish. I learned a lot. I hope a lot of you did. And we had some very interesting observations and getting to meet some really terrific people who are working very hard in many different ways. So appreciate all of you coming. Appreciate our speakers very much. And you can save the chat if you wish. I'm not sure what's on it at this point. But thank you all for coming. See you.
Thank you, Dick.